All right, so today, Jonathan Gavoni of ESPN reported that Shaedon Sharpe, ESPN's number one ranked recruit in the class of 2022, would be eligible to apply for the 22 NBA draft as an early entry candidate. Sharpe is currently on campus and practicing with Kentucky, but has not yet played a game. This has the potential to shake up the upcoming draft, and so we got our guy, Sam Vecenie, to help us break this down. Thank you for joining us, Sam, on such short notice.
I'm glad to be here. I look like shit right now because I have been awake since 6 o'clock, essentially making phone calls and writing because Kyle Tucker and I, our Kentucky beat writer, teamed up on a story to kind of, explain what this Shaedon Sharpe situation is and is not. It's a complicated explanation on what's happening, I think, is the fair way to put it.
Yeah, let's get into that some. And just for our listeners, this will come out on Saturday. We're recording this Thursday night, so this is like a multi-layered slam and jam coming at you. So why are we just now finding out about Sharpe's eligibility? Kyle Tucker sent out a tweet saying, like, this is not a new development, but this was not something they wanted to get out. Like, did something change? Like, what's going on here?
So I've been making calls to NBA teams, to agents, to grassroots people throughout the morning that I've been awake. And obviously for me, the morning's a little bit different than you guys, right? The story broke at like 5:45 and, I happened to be awake at 6 o'clock and just immediately started working. So that's also the question that NBA teams have is why is this breaking now? This is not a new development. Kyle is right. This is not a new development for NBA teams either. This is not a new development for me. I've known that this is a possibility essentially since December. And the reason that, for instance, I haven't talked about it, and I think other reporters haven't talked about it. It seems like, for instance, Jeremy Wu at Sports Illustrated knew about it, given what he tweeted immediately after. Is kind of twofold here. So first, Shaedon Sharpe has been very clear throughout the process that he does not, he hadn't seen himself as a 2022 prospect. He'd seen himself more as a 2023 prospect because he was planning on sitting out this year after enrolling early and then attending Kentucky for the 2022-23 season. In fact, we got a quote from Shaedon Sharpe's mom, Kyle Tucker did, within our story saying, that's still the plan, is to go back to Kentucky and play, right? So this whole time, that's been Shaedon Sharpe's plan, seemingly. On top of that, there's some question in terms of his eligibility. If you know the report from John, who's great, like I have no, I love John. I think that he does a great job over at ESPN. I don't take shots at John. I certainly don't mean this to come off that way. He wrote it as Shaedon Sharpe can apply for the 2022 NBA draft, which is very specific wording, which means that the NBA is going to have to make a determination on his eligibility as to whether or not he will be cleared to be part of the 2022 NBA draft. And the reason for that is kind of what Kyle and I wrote. So it appears, according to Kyle Weaver, who was Shaedon Sharpe's high school coach in Arizona, that Shaedon finished his classes to graduate in the summer. I can't really get anyone who's telling me when he graduated and when he actually finished high school. And in order to be eligible for like the upcoming draft in any year, you have to meet a two-pronged process as a college player. You have to have turned 19 within the calendar year or older within the calendar year of the draft. So if you turn 19 on December 30th, 2022, you meet that criteria, even though you are 18 throughout most of the year. You guys are well aware of this from having dealt with the Alexei Pokusevsky being the youngest player in the NBA for a year situation. The second prong is that a NBA season has to have elapsed between the time that you graduated and like your year, right? So like he has to essentially have graduated before this NBA season has started in order to meet the one and done criteria of the draft. And there is no way yet to know how the NBA is going to come down on that, just given that the NBA does not make a ruling on such matters until a player actually applies for the NBA draft and gives them the documentation necessary. Like there's just no reason for them to waste their time otherwise. Like Shaedon Sharpe might not declare for the draft at the end of the day, and there's no reason to import resources into figuring this thing out until it becomes a necessity.
Yeah.
So I say all of this to say, I find it likely that John is probably right. Like John is very good at this. And I would imagine that he has some sort of information that says there's a good shot that Shaedon Sharpe's going to be eligible for the 2022 NBA draft. I want to see the, T's crossed and the I's dotted, I guess, at some point here, just to kind of understand understand a little bit more here.
So let's work under the assumption that he does become eligible for this draft, because that's the more fun scenario. We've got a lot of fans of bad teams out there who are now suddenly excited that a top prospect might be in this draft. Tell us a little bit about who Shaedon Sharpe is as a player and how he ended up as the number one ranked recruit in his high school class. Yeah,
really interesting story. So he is originally from Canada, plays for the UPlay program up there for his AAU basketball. And he came down to the United States, I believe, for his sophomore year. He originally enrolled at Sunrise Christian in Kansas and then went to Dream City Christian in Arizona. Both of these places are high-level basketball schools, and he did it to develop. And back when he was at Sunrise Christian, he was seen as like a solid 4-star recruit, super upside, long, athletic, has a real chance to be an impact player, but very raw, very, very raw in terms of skill set. Over the course of his junior year, and particularly within the summer between what would have been his junior and senior year, he exploded. He became not only a ridiculous athlete who's 6'6" with like a 6'11" wingspan, something in that range, who can leap and finish way above the rim and be active defensively and has good body control and balance and everything like that. He became a real shot maker and shot creator. At Peach Jam, for instance, which is important because last year was the first year that NBA scouts were allowed at Peach Jam in order to get real evaluation time with this class, because the pandemic had kind of wreaked havoc on NBA scouts' ability to get evaluation time with that upcoming recruiting class in 2022. Shaedon Sharpe dominated. He led the EYBL in scoring last year. And at Peach Jam particularly, he scored, I believe it was like 7 points per game off of pull-up jump shots. He shot like 40% from three. And we're talking like high degree of difficulty shots, like out of isolation, crossover, left to right, step back, sidestep, going to his right, staying on balance, knocking down a shot. Can do it going to his left as well. Real shot making, craft, and ability for himself. On top of that, he led Peach Jam in finishing efficiency at the basket, including all bigs. He shot 72% at the basket at Peach Jam last year, which is like a ridiculous combination of skills whenever you're trying to project a player to the NBA. On top of that, 6'6", 6'11"-ish wingspan, let's call it. Could be 7 foot, could be 6'10". He has long arms. He is a active on-ball defender. When he's like really truly engaged. I don't know what he's going to look like off the ball just because it's AAU and who the fuck knows with AAU basketball guys in terms of like off ball awareness defensively. It's just not something that comes into play all that often. Yeah. And on top of that, where the concerns are going to kind of come in is just a lot of his play comes out of isolation right now because nobody could really guard him at that level, right? He hasn't had like a crazy amount of reps in pick and roll. He doesn't have like a ton of tape yet, at least. I don't know if he can or can't do this, but he doesn't have a lot of tape, at least, of him hitting high level passes and being like a quote unquote high feel for the game guy or anything like that. We don't have like evidence of that yet. But you combine the athleticism with the shot making ability from three, with the finishing, with his frame that looks like it's going to be able to put on 15 more pounds of muscle pretty easily. It's a very enticing skill set that NBA teams are very, very interested in.
So listening to you and Penny on the Game Theory pod, you guys did a mock draft recently, and things started to get a little weird around 5 or 6. So given how uncertain things are at about that part in the draft, is Sharpe a lock to go top 5, even though we've never seen him play at Kentucky?
So I would be stunned if he fell out of the top 10. I think if the right team got the number 1 overall pick, he would be in the mix and at the very least get a workout.
Ooh. Is
Like
there a team that when you say that, like, you think of?
Yeah, like think of Orlando, right? Orlando has Wendell Carter Jr. They have Franz Wagner. They have Jonathan Isaac, whatever Mo Bamba is going to be, right? The top 3 guys at the top of this class are all bigs. They're Jabari Smith, Chet Holmgren, Paolo Banchero. I think there's a case that, Jaden Ivey's a better prospect than Shaedon Sharpe. I would currently rank Jaden Ivey ahead of Shaedon Sharpe. Okay. But I think the teams will differ on that, to be honest. So I think that if Orlando would get the number 1 overall pick, for instance, and by the way, they have the worst record in the NBA right now. They would almost have to consider him on some level. Like he fills the exact thing that they need as a shot making wing with real size and strength and length. Like if you have Jalen Suggs as the guard you're building around, you have Shaedon Sharpe as the wing you're building around, you have Wagner and Isaac and Wendell Carter, and then you have Cole Anthony, like Chuma Okeke, like you have all these guys, like it's a very enticing, I think, set of players to build around if you'd be Orlando. Whereas if you're taking someone like Chet Holmgren, what do you do with Wendell Carter at that point? What do you do with Chet Holmgren? What do you do with Jonathan Isaac? Same thing goes for Jabari Smith. Same thing goes for Paolo Banchero. I think that there are teams like Orlando that should like at least bring Shaedon Sharpe in, see what he looks like against guys working out, and just kind of go from there.
Sam, I wanted to read you a tweet and get your reaction. So this comes to us from @StephenG.Hoops, who in reaction to this news tweeted, "If we're going just on high school film, I'm sure Jaden Hardy would be similarly talked about at this point if he hadn't played all season." Do you agree with that, or is there more reason to be confident regarding the evaluation of Sharpe at this point?
I think more reason to be confident on Sharpe because Hardy has always had holes in his game in regard to, look, you have to be a crazy athlete in terms of just quickness, body control, like explosiveness, finishing at the basket, everything like that. Like you have to be a crazy athlete to be I don't know, how tall do we think Jaden Hardy is? Like 6'2.5", 6'3"?
Yeah, 6'3" feels generous.
Something like that, right? Yeah. Like he's listed at 6'4", but I don't know. When I see him, in those games in the G League, I'm not totally convinced he's that big. He is long, like he makes up for it with his length and everything. But I've always thought that Jaden Hardy was a little bit less interesting than Shaedon Sharpe. He's shorter. He is never defended at the level that Sharpe has at least flashed from time to time defensively. And frankly, I think he's a worse shooter. Like Sharpe has had some, inconsistent moments as a shot maker, but I think that I trust him a little bit more as a pull-up shooter. And that bit of length and height, it really matters when you're going up levels and you're able to get cleaner looks against a wider swath of players. that are matched up against you in mismatches, and that you're able to have real contact balance going toward the rim and everything like that. So I understand the point that he's trying to make. I don't think that it's an unfair point that Shaedon Sharpe is still a very high variance prospect, because he is. I think that's undeniable. Like, Shaedon Sharpe could bust. He could be really good. I would not deny that at all. I think he's a higher level prospect than Jaden Hardy by a somewhat substantial margin.
Okay, one last question. I'm just curious how this season, you have your top three guys, really four: Jabari Smith, Chet Holmgren, Paolo, Jaden Ivey. Is kind of, everybody has those guys in some kind of order. Which one of those guys has surprised you the most so far this season?
Jabari Smith, I think.
Okay.
I did not expect him to be as polished off the bounce to where he'd be able to like grab and go on the break and be able to like pull up for three off of grab and goes because nobody meets him like at the point of attack. I've been very impressed with Jabari Smith. I think that I kind of expected some early struggles from him, just dealing with the strength, dealing with kind of everything that comes with being skinny and having to adjust to playing college basketball.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's been no adjustment. He's also the youngest of these guys, and I think there's a case that he's been every bit as effective as Chet and Paolo. And to be that young, he doesn't turn 19 until May. Like, he's basically the same age as like Shaedon Sharpe, who we're all talking about as this like underage prospect that is going to have to get cleared by the NBA essentially to enter this draft. I mean, yeah, I've been remarkably impressed with Jabari Smith. I think that he's morphed into a very real, legitimate like guy that would go in the top three in any draft.
Yeah. Have you said that you didn't have a tier one prospect. Is he approaching that at all?
Not really.
Yeah.
Not really. Shaedon Sharpe wouldn't either. I mean, look, tier one guys for me are like Cade was one last year. I had DeAndre Ayton and Luka Doncic there because I was a little bit higher on DeAndre's shot creation than some people were.
Mm-hmm.
Zion was definitely a tier one guy. And when Zion's been on the court, I mean, kind of inarguable, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's just been
Force of
unbelievable.
nature. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's more the tier one guys. And I think Cade is well on his way to, kind of fulfilling that promise as well. So, I would say I don't have a tier one guy in this class. I probably have those three are like maybe tier two guys. Okay. And then the rest are going to be like tier three and tier four and down.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Sam, thanks so much for joining.
I mean, not really awesome. Like, not really that fun.
There's some fun guys in this class, though. Like, there's some weirdos in this class that I really like. I love like just strange players that you're like, I don't know exactly what to do with, like Chet Holmgren. Like, what do we exactly do with him once he gets to the NBA level? Like, I like seeing those guys enter the NBA. Like, I want as many NBA weirdos as possible, and this class seems to offer some of that.
Have you guys come across David Roddy yet at Colorado State?
I have not.
What's his story?
He is like a 6'4.5", 6'5", something like that. 250-pound like bowling ball who shoots threes at like 43% and is like super strong and physical and is good defensively. Like, just exactly what you're talking about. Just like a total like oddball prospect that I have no idea what to do with. But I am so intrigued and fascinated. Like, I'm pretty sure that he's just like super high level Europe, like put him in the ACB and just let him rock, like small ball 5 and 4. But I don't know. I'm not ruling it out. with the NBA.
That's amazing. That's an incredible story. Oh, Sam, thanks so much for joining on such short notice to just inform us. Because when stuff like this happens, it's confusing to a lot of people. I think a lot of people don't understand the story, understand why things happen. So we appreciate you joining us on the Saturday Slam and Jam.
Of course. And I do just, again, I want to reiterate, like the plan with Shaedon Sharpe the whole way has been do the second year at Kentucky.
Yeah.
2022, 23. Like, I don't think it's as certain that he will be in this draft as it is like Paolo and Chet and those guys. Like, I think that there's just a lot of wiggle room here. If I was advising him, I would tell him, like, go do it. Like this draft is wide open for you. Like, if you go work out really well, you should. But, I think it's worth reiterating and keeping in mind, like, there's a lot of uncertainty about the situation and it'll have to play out over the next couple of months.